Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listeners, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And we're both congested now, so it's just
Yeah, it's a
like a
congested
fun.
party.
It
I
is,
feel I
yeah.
feel great though. I like recording in the morning. I have pumpkin chai tea.
I was wondering what was in that cauldron cup. Very cool.
It's very cozy.
Nice.
So yeah.
I realized after I came to your house the other day that I still haven't brought you your Art the Clown pins. I failed to put them in the gift that I gave to you, and I feel like this is like a thing that I do. I have a gift from my boss that I forgot to bring her. My
hmm
friend Emily's
hmm
birthday is like in March, and I still have not given, or
I
in
think
May, sorry,
there
and
was
I
one
still have
time where you
not.
had a gift for me for like 2 years.
Did I ever give? One time I had a gift for my friend Amy for so long that I just kept it. I was like, they're socks, and it's been like 3 years. I moved to Oregon with the
Ah,
gift, and I was like, you know what? It's time to give this up. Like, I don't know what's
it's too
wrong with
late. Yeah.
me. It's like a problem. I'm not a
Yeah.
good gift
There
giver.
was
I'm a
one you
good
had for
gift
me for a long
buyer.
time. No, you have great buying skills for
Yeah,
sure.
it's just the actually like
The
handing it off.
distribution part.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's really piss poor, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, good morning, guys. This is
Good morning.
Twisted Listers in the morning, and
AM edition.
yep, and part two of Murder Suicides.
hmm
Thanks everybody for tuning in. We've been getting a huge influx of listens. We do notice. We do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, so that's pretty badass. And join us on Instagram, join us on Patreon, join us on all the places. Everything is linked in our show notes. So if you want to know where we are and you don't know, now you know. So, should we just jump into this? We both have busy
Yeah.
days. This is early in the morning
Yes.
before we start doing things.
hmm
So let's cut to the chase.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
I'm going to start since you started last time. And oh, I totally, there we go. I'm like, where is the beginning of these notes? Because I put them on the same page and got myself confused. So I'm doing the story of Mark and Jennair Gerardot. And I just want to know, Diva, are you ready to be like so irritated?
I'm ready. I'm already irritated by the name Jennair.
Oh, I
So
know, I know. It's a weird
I'm
name.
here. I'm ready.
It's definitely a strange, like, who did that? Who chose that?
Jennair.
Jennair.
Maybe I'm
So,
being an asshole and it's like a cultural thing. I don't know.
I mean, she's
Maybe.
white, so
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know.
yeah. Could be a white culture thing
Yeah,
from a culture.
does not make it okay. In any case, all right. Mark
Uh,
Gerardo and Jennair Cox met in high school in Indiana in the 80s. She was 16 and he was 18, so I believe this was 80, 86, 80, 86, something like that, 1986. And they didn't date then, but they kind of, knew who each other was. And they reconnected 4 years later when she was 20 and he was 22. And they just ran into each other randomly, in Indiana and kinda started talking, and eventually Jennair said to him, "Are you gonna ask me out?" And he was like, "Hell yeah, I am." And they started
okay.
dating and were really into each other. She was really into him, loved him dearly. Mark was a bit of like a he said himself in interview, and first of all, let me just tell you that a lot of what I got is from this 2020 interview, not all of it, because there's definitely some good articles out there, but I watched this 2020 special on this, and basically, he's talking the whole time. He's not dead. I fucking hate this guy with such a burning, deep passion, so I just wanna
Okay.
put that out there because if
Yeah.
what I say sounds biased, it's because it is. So there you
It's good
go.
to put that out there right away. Like he's a dick, just so you know.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
my mind, like he's the worst. So Mark himself said that he really cares what people think of him, and he's like a rule follower because he wants everybody to like him. Red flag. And Jennair was very much the opposite. Like she didn't care what people thought. She was like a rebel. Like she did what she wanted. She's very like strong-willed and very like smart and very assertive. And he really liked that. Mark loved that because it made him feel alive because he was too afraid to be that way. And she loved him, I think, because he balanced her out. She felt like he was her rock. It was like the safe space because she was kind of more frenetic in her personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't have a ton of information about their home lives, but for whatever reason, this worked. They got married in 1993. They lived a really good life. They both worked in marketing. There were definitely some struggles, which makes sense because they got married pretty young. They started dating when she was 20 and he was 22, so together
Yeah.
for a long period, or starting young. you know, uh, and it's hard to know at that point how your careers are going to go, how your finances are going to go, and money often becomes an issue between people, as their relationship, you know, continues. But mostly they had a good life. They both worked in marketing, and for the most part, they both had jobs. So, there's tons of movies and photos of them having fun and hanging out. They never had kids. Mark did say that they talked about it often, and I don't know why they didn't have them. Part of me feels like he didn't want them because he didn't want to be like permanently tied down. And I know that's just a big assumption on my part. But this guy is like a smarmy little fucking snake. And he thinks he's fooling people with this nice guy act. So
Yeah.
I don't fucking buy it.
Okay.
So I think he always had one foot out the door. And I think Jennair, on the other hand, was all in. So instead of having kids, they had dogs and they started to get a little older together. So now we're in like 2017. He's 47 or no, uh 40, yeah, in 20, I don't know. Anyway, he moves to Delaware. He gets a job at the University of Delaware. It's in like 2016 or 2017. Like I said, they both worked in marketing, and Mark got a job at the university. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but when he interviewed, he met with 32-year-old Meredith Chapman, who is obviously, she's like 15 years younger than him, and
Mm-hmm.
she was supposed to be his boss. Now, he
Okay.
says that he's apprehensive about this, but then was immediately blown away by her professionalism and her accomplishments at such a young age. So she had like run for some political seat in Delaware, I think Senate. She ran for the Senate. She didn't win. But she was one of those people like Meredith was she was a cheerleader and then she became like a cheerleading instructor. She was like, all the awards and accolades, straight A student. She was one of
Yeah.
those people that was
Overachiever.
just like super overachiever, super
Yeah, for
overachiever,
sure.
and like just had all the energy in the world. People were like, where the fuck do you get this energy? Because me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like I can't, the thought of that makes me tired. Like I'm not even doing it. Like
You're
all,
literally like an overachiever in your job though, but like you just, you
I
are.
mean, I'm just a very
You know.
tired person, I guess. So
Yeah. You're a tired overachiever.
I try to
Tired
be,
of it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
complain constantly, but then I always do, It's
Yeah.
one of those things. She, on the other hand, is like, I love working 24 hours a day and being perfect. And it's like, great, good for you. She was also really pretty, which obviously helps. So he decides to take the job and he moves to Delaware without Jennair. She had to stay in
Oh.
Delaware for around 45 days to wrap up things. She didn't have a job at this
Okay.
point. Like she'd lost her job and it was a
It
big hit
happens.
hit for her. Yeah, so she was kind of in a
Yeah.
low place. So Jennair is struggling personally. So Mark ditches her and moves to Delaware and starts hanging out with this pretty 32-year-old, right?
Perfect.
For
Perfect.
45 days, he's there without Jennair, and we can all
Uh,
guess what happened. This
yeah.
shallow, midlife crisis having motherfucker starts to
Oh.
fuck around with this younger woman. And for whatever
Yeah.
reason, she's into him. And also, she's married. And she's married to someone her own age, who's a city
Okay.
council member, seemingly a very nice man. Meredith apparently told Mark here that it was kind of a sham marriage the last couple of years. They were basically like roommates. And
Sure.
again, Mark is the one in the interview here. And they
That's
ask,
his perspective, his
yeah,
feeling he
they're
wants to
like,
put out there.
yeah, and they're like, "Did you talk about your relationship with Jennair?" And he's like, "I mean, a little bit." And I'm like, "Dude, you were fucking dragging her name through the mud from day one, setting this up to make Meredith believe that you were unhappy, that you wanted that it was a when all this is this guy wants this
Yeah.
chick. Like, so he's just setting this up. Meredith's falling for it. She's younger. She's in love. Whatever, right? I'm sorry. This is just like I feel like I'm sure he's telling Meredith, like, "Oh, my wife is so mean to me. I feel trapped." And it's like
Mhm.
your wife
Yeah.
of like 20 something years is going through a really hard time, and this is what you do. Like, you are a turd. You're a fucking turd.
Yeah. Yes.
Anyway, Mark later said that Meredith made him feel alive the way that Jennair used to, because women
Such
are
a
just a means
cliche.
to an end for this guy, like they're
Yeah,
just,
yeah. It's about, and also it's about how he feels.
yes, there's no reciprocity here. He doesn't give a
No,
shit about anybody else.
no.
So he, of course, lies to Jennair and hides the affair because after like 2 weeks, he and Meredith share a kiss. After like 4 weeks, they're like telling each other that they love each other.
Uh-huh.
So Jennair moves to Delaware, unaware of what's going on. Uh, and then again, Mark, instead of being a supportive and loving husband, spends most of his time, quote, at work, and ends up talking to Jennair about Meredith so much that Jennair is like, "You're having an affair. Like, I
Yeah,
know that you are."
he's not subtle.
No, he's not, because all he cares about is himself. So Mark
Yeah.
denies this, but he's such a fucking self-absorbed idiot that he doesn't stop gushing about Meredith.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah, so Jennair, who's a very smart woman and always takes matters into her own hands, like I said, does so
Yeah.
again. She buys tracking devices, she buys recording devices, and she
Ugh.
plants these in Mark's car and his clothing.
It's almost worse to just, I mean, no, it is objectively worse to cheat on someone and then gaslight them. Like, just own up to
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah. And his whole thing is the way that he narrates the story, you can see right through it. Like what he
Mm-hmm.
says and what actually happened are completely different, and it's absolutely crystal fucking clear.
Yeah.
So, she has his phone cloned so she can spy on him, reads his texts. She knows that he's telling this other woman that he loves her. Finally, Jennair confronts him with the evidence and he admits what's going on. However, Mark says that he admits what's going on and tells Jennair that he wants a divorce. That's what he says happens. But let's focus on the trajectory of what happens from here, right? So this is in like December 2017 that he tells her this, or something like that, somewhere in 2017, right? This all comes to a head in end of April 2018. So he's saying he's already told Jennair that he wants a divorce and they're going to start working through that, right? However, they're still living together, and I'll just get there. So
Okay.
Jennair's pissed. Just going back to when she first finds out. She does something that I would have done and actually have done one time. One of Rory's exes started like hitting him up on Instagram and sending him inappropriate messages, and his
Mm,
responses were very much like, "Hey, please don't do this. Like, I'm not interested."
yeah.
Um, but I found out and I screenshotted them and sent them to her husband. I was like, "Fuck you." Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
fair enough. If you have a
Yeah,
husband and you're
fuck
doing that,
her. Yeah,
it's kind
you
of
don't do
fair.
that shit.
Yeah,
Like, don't pull us
that's
into
fair.
your weird drama. Like, figure your shit
No.
out. So anyway, she tells Meredith's husband. She calls the university where they both work at Delaware and tells them what's going on.
Oh,
So she's like, "I will
okay.
fucking burn this shit to the ground."
She's on the warpath. Yeah.
She is. So again, Mark makes it sound like he's really upfront with her about things, but the few recordings that I've heard between them make it sound like he's leading her on. Like he's not telling her, "I want a divorce." He's telling her, like, "Yes, let's work it out." And to this point, he agrees to go to a marriage counselor with her. Like, why would you do that if you've already told her you want a divorce and that you're in love with somebody else and that you know what I mean? Why would you do that? So they
Yeah.
go to this marriage counselor. She actually, Jennair posted on her Facebook that she was looking for someone good with trauma, child parenting issues, and infidelity. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and, she was still all in with Mark. So after about
Okay.
3 sessions, Mark says, "I want a divorce." So Jennair tells him and her friends and family that she can't wrap her head around it being over, that it's
Yeah.
24 years of her life down the toilet,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And
That's
this is,
really traumatic and horrible to deal
it
with.
is. And it's for a
Yeah.
woman, 15 years younger than he is, who he's known, for what, 6 months, 8 months at this point? Men just
Yeah.
love
Who's
to blow their
married,
lives
so it
up
makes it
like
extra.
this.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. So he later said when trying to garner sympathy that Meredith told him that she thought he was a good man, which is something he, quote, never once heard Jennair say.
Oh
But
my
friends
God.
said that, like, Jennair built her life around Mark and knew from the
Yeah,
moment they started dating
dude.
he was the one. So there's no way that she didn't pay him compliments. You know what I mean?
Oh my
Like, give
God.
me a break. Give me a fucking break.
Yeah.
So basically, the funniest thing is like if you go on YouTube and watch this interview in parts, all of the comments are like, "Hey, hey, fuck this guy. Hey, this guy sucks." And I'm like,
Fuck
"Yes,
you and fuck everything you're saying.
fuck you,
Like,
Mark." Yeah, it's fantastic.
yeah, no, no one's buying it.
Yeah. So anyway, he tells her he wants a divorce, supposedly, and she says, I need time. And according to him, she puts together this itinerary where they're going to do certain things and then she'll grant him the divorce. So she tells
Okay.
him, we're going to live together until the end of May. And this is now, we're in like February 2018. Spend as
Hmm.
much time together as possible and live normally. I'm not sure what stipulations there were about Mark seeing Meredith, because if they existed, he left them out of his version of things. And I'm also sure part of the agreement that he, wasn't to see her, you know, which I understand is a crazy request, but I feel like she wouldn't have even tried that if he wasn't lying about what was going on or gaslighting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because she was also continuing to like put tracking devices on him, because what he was telling her and what she was finding out were not the same. So if this guy
Yeah.
really is saying like, I want a divorce, I'm going to move out, then everything else that happened wouldn't be this way. So I think he's trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Hmm.
So anyway, um, they also try this 2020 tries to edit things to make Mark look as good as possible, which I really don't like. Like they try to make
Mm.
her
Yeah.
out to be the
Why?
and she is the bad guy, just to spoil it, but like he's also.
Right. Right.
So anyway, they're like, whatever he said, oh, we're going to live normally. And here's the deal. Meredith at this point has moved on. She is divorced from her husband. She's moved to this area called the Main Line in Pennsylvania. It's basically like Beverly Hills, but kind of older money. Very
Okay.
safe, very nice. She's got a new job. She left the University of Delaware. I don't know if she got fired or what happened. I mean, you're probably not allowed to date your subordinate. So my
No.
assumption is that they, got rid of her. But she starts this new job. She's moving on. And God knows what
Yeah.
Mark is telling her. So she is basically, she made the mistake of having an affair, but very quickly ended her relationship and kind of got her shit together, right? So she moves. And, to clarify, we're now about 2 years into this affair. And we're
Mhm.
now in late April. And back in February, so like 2 months prior to this, there's photos and video of Mark and Jennair together. There was a solar eclipse on the East Coast, and they're like hugging and laughing. And like, you would never know that these videos and photos were from a time where they're like straight up heading for a divorce. There were
Yeah.
never any divorce papers filed for them. I'm sorry, I'm really
Okay.
driving this home because I hate this guy so much.
Okay. Okay. So he's
So,
not
anyway,
like you're implying he's perhaps not serious about the
yes,
divorce.
I
Okay.
don't think so. So Jennair finally, like, they're kind of living. I don't know if they're living together at this point or what, but it's April 23rd, and she and Jennair and Mark, had a date for dinner. And he goes to the restaurant, and she texts him, like, I'm not coming. I had a change of plans. And he's like, okay, that's weird. And then she texts him, you ruined my life. I hope you never find happiness. Bye, Mark. So the first thing this
Okay.
asshole does is like, oh, I got a free night. He calls Meredith, like, hey, what are you up to? And Meredith does not answer. And it's like 8 o'clock at night. And Mark is like, what the fuck? So then he starts to get freaked out, and he drives to Meredith's house. And he starts banging on the windows, and he walks in, and he sees Meredith face down on the floor in her kitchen.
Hmm.
And he runs back out, and he starts like freaking out. One of the neighbors comes over, they call 911, and the police arrive. When police go inside, or when police arrive, Mark says to them, I think my wife is in there. I think my wife is in there. So they go
Okay.
in and they find Meredith on the ground in the kitchen. She has been shot. And then a few rooms over, I think in the living room, they find Jennair, and she has killed herself.
Ugh.
So Jennair had been
Hmm.
planning this for weeks and weeks and weeks. She bought a gun, she went to the shooting range multiple times, including the hours before she came to this house.
Hmm.
Neighbors had later reported that they'd seen a woman dressed in all black, staking out the house, like stalking Meredith, watching her coming and going, seeing kind of what she was doing. And yeah, she fucking killed Meredith, and then she killed herself.
So sad.
It's so sad. And like, here's the thing. One of the things that I saw somebody write, they were like, I had nothing but sympathy for Jennair right up until she pulled the trigger. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
what she did is completely unforgivable and horrible and wrong.
And I would definitely feel more empathy if she killed her husband. Like, like,
Well, it's
I
funny that you
mean,
said that because one of her
yeah.
plan B backups was, like, to wait for him to go over there and then kill
Hmm.
all of them. But I
Yeah.
hate to say that I think that even in all of her anger and all of her rage, she could not bring herself to kill Mark because she loved him so much,
Yeah.
which
That's
is also so twisted.
and it's like how so many women always kind of focus their scapegoating and their anger on the other woman. And it's like, no, she's kind of embroiled into this manipulator's bullshit too. Leave her out
Yeah,
of it.
exactly, and it's like regardless of whatever you're seeing them texting each other, like, you don't know what their phone calls are, you don't know what he says to her when they're
Yeah.
alone together, like,
Yeah.
you don't I mean, maybe she does, I mean, she was putting recording devices excuse me, in his shirts and shit. So I don't know the level to which Meredith was, a part of this, but I know that she got divorced, she moved on, she made all the right moves,
Yeah.
and to murder somebody over a man, like, come
Yeah.
on,
Especially
like,
a man as shitty as this.
yeah. I think what it was that Mark did find a way to kind of make Jennair so wrapped up in his life that she didn't feel like she had anything if she didn't have him. And I'm not saying that's his
Yeah.
fault solely. It's just
Yeah. I
the
mean, if you
sign of
would
like
do
a bad
this,
relationship.
that means that your identity is fully wrapped up in that person.
Yeah, and there's a lot more going on that you're able to commit like a murder suicide is pretty
Yeah.
fucking crazy.
Yes.
Um so not fucking cool on Jennair. And I didn't mean like I was telling Rory the story and he's like, well, that doesn't make what she did okay. And I was like, I'm not saying that. And I realized it kind of sounded like I was almost like excusing her by being like, this guy Mark's the biggest piece of shit. But no, like they're both pieces. Like she's the worst too. Like she's a fucking murderer. She murdered an essentially innocent woman with like a bright future who was like 33 years old at the time. So fucked up. So everybody
Yeah.
here is wrong. Meredith is the least wrong and the biggest victim in all of this. A few things that happened after the fact because Meredith was divorced, her then ex-husband and her family went toe to toe over her life insurance policy, and he ended up getting
Okay.
it. And then Mark moved on. He moved to Los Angeles. He's like a marketing guy down here, and he is now in a relationship with a woman who looks strikingly similar to Jennair. So, pretty interesting there.
Uh,
Yeah.
oh my God. I hope he at least feels bad.
I don't think he does. If you watch
No,
these
I know.
interviews, it's just
Yeah.
like that's why
It's
it
a
was
hope.
really if I had read the story, I think my perspective on the whole thing would have been a bit different, but actually listening to this motherfucker talk,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oof, I cannot. I simply cannot."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, there you go, guys. That's this
Wow.
tale. Shit's fucked up.
What a cool guy.
Yeah,
Um,
and what a cool lady. Fuck them both. Poor Meredith. Yeah.
yeah. No,
Whew.
she
All
didn't
right.
deserve that.
I
Okay.
know I know what yours is. I'm excited.
Yeah, good morning. I'm gonna tell you about Ricky Rodriguez. Um, okay. So yeah, this might be a little long, but I did the shortest version of it I possibly could,
You
given
always
what
say
it
that,
is.
and then I feel like I still talk more than you, so you're
No,
totally good.
we'll be okay. So I'm talking about the Children of God and its most famous, well, survivor in quotes, Ricky
Oh my god.
Rodriguez.
Did you just hear me go, like, snort really loudly?
No.
Okay, good, I hope I muted it.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
anyway, sorry.
All right. So I'm going to do like the world's fastest overview of the cult itself because I want to get to
Oof.
Ricky and his story.
Okay.
So the Children of God was founded by a one of the worst human beings to ever
Yes.
exist, named David Berg.
Mhm.
He declared himself a prophet, as they always do, and he went by Moses or Mo and Dad, which often ends up in some very creepy sentences
Mhm.
by his followers in this cult, which he started in the late 1960s as Teens for Christ, which I just like threw up in my mouth.
Yeah, mm-mm,
Ooh.
mm-mm. No
And
thanks.
by the way, the creepiest part about this is that he starts Teens for Christ when the dude is in like his 50s. He's not a fucking teen,
Yeah, like,
right?
why even
Um,
why?
like if
Why?
teens started that, I'm fine with it. But when an old
Right.
man is starting Teens for Christ,
That's a
ew.
big red flag. That's a big
Yes.
red flag.
He's
Yeah,
like, you know what I want
uh-uh.
to do? I want to get together a bunch of teens, right?
And use the power of God to manipulate them, to guide quote,
Yeah.
unquote, "guide" them. Yeah, great.
Yeah, and Teens for Christ was actually founded by Berg in Huntington Beach, California. Fun fact.
Oh god.
Um, yeah, his focus basically was doing a Christian cult starter, pack, but with like a free love hippie gloss over it because he was trying to get those like 60s um
A
cult
lot of them
leaning
do that.
hippie people. Yeah.
Yeah, the cult vibes. A lot of cult leaders, they went for the, like, chill
Yes.
hippie vibe thing. I don't know why.
Absolutely.
Very
Yeah,
weird.
and I don't know, there's something about the chill hippie types that might be easier. They might be more prone to join a cult, Cindy. I'm just trying to say
Maybe.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they value community. They value like connections and like kind of a communal situation more already ideologically, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what he's doing. He's recruiting hippie types from Haight Ashbury, for example, and all over Southern California. And it starts out being kind of a standard, I would say, evangelical type Christian group where they're awaiting the second coming, and the group is
Oof.
going to save the world in that context when the world is doomed. So it's like it sounds bad, but it's pretty standard
Yeah. Yeah. It does
Christian
not
stuff.
sound good, though.
However, Berg's real mission in starting the cult from fucking minute one is he's a pedophile. So let's just be
Great.
clear.
Yeah.
Let's be clear.
Great.
And that quickly comes out, but he's smart. He makes sure to get a substantial following first with like the
Mhm.
normal-ish stuff. So he doesn't
Right.
like he phases it in slowly. But this dude is obsessed with sex and specifically the sexual abuse of minors, not
Mhm.
consensual adult sex. That's not his thing.
Yeah. No, he
So,
doesn't want any of
no,
that, like,
no, 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 no,
consensual legal stuff.
no, no, no.
Oh.
So he starts first with a defining practice for the cult called flirty fishing, which is essentially forcing the women to undertake sex work with primarily strangers in order to bring those people into the cult. It's like a
Mm-mm.
conversion method.
No.
Um, yeah, so you're like both having sex with someone for money to bring money to the cult and trying to like proselytize them at the same time.
That's insane, truly.
Yes. He
Jesus Christ.
forbade birth control because he also wanted these women to get pregnant from flirty fishing, which, surprise, surprise, they did,
Yeah,
and gain more members for the cult. So he's got a long term plan here.
that's fucked
Um,
up. That's fucking crazy.
oh, yeah, barely serious.
Jesus.
So Berg issued his teachings to his cult through these demented newsletters he called Mo letters because he's Mo for Moses, which
He's
would
Mo
include,
for Mo Lester.
yeah, very
Sorry.
good.
Thank you.
That's true. So these included really insane cartoons that illustrated his messages, and I
Right.
wish I had time to just like have a slide PowerPoint show right now and show you stuff. Like
I
one
wish you
about
did too.
flirty, yeah. There's one about flirty fishing where it's like a man and woman in bed, and it's like whores for God question mark in like giant
What?
cartoon letters. Yeah, that's this is all earnest. This is all serious.
Jesus Christ.
Then there's another one where Adam and Eve, looking kind of youngish, are standing before God with the big bold text, "Child brides," and he's saying like, "Yeah,
Like, I
that's the
am
tone.
pro this.
Yes, that's a good thing."
That's fucking
Um,
nuts.
so from here, sort of flirty fishing is like his transitional step to go from essentially the sex trafficking of adult women, and eventually it includes children.
Right.
So,
Lovely.
uh, before long, child sexual abuse in the cult is literally systematically implemented. And when I talk about Ricky's abuse, I'll get into how, but like it is
Ugh,
a system. There are
that's,
there are
yeah.
sign up sheets. There are forms. Like it is a
Yikes.
fucking system. Every child in this cult is getting sexually abused.
Great.
Um, so Berg's teachings also, just as a side note, comes up less, but I have to mention it,
Mhm.
include white supremacy, anti Semitism, and homophobia, and violent corporal punishment. So just, I'll touch on
Just a
that less, but
little,
just keep it in mind.
yeah. Good God.
So the co leader of the cult comes in with one Karen Zerby. Berg was already married, but Karen Zerby is his second additional wife. There's not a
Because of
divorce,
course.
right?
Yeah, no,
Um,
no.
no, he's a cult leader. Yeah,
Yeah,
you gotta have a couple wives.
yeah. At least.
Uh, and Karen, because everyone has a fun cult name, Karen would become known as Maria, right? Duh.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
so with Zerby at his side, David ran the cult like a typical cult leader. He does also stuff like controlling diets, clothing, hairstyles, separating families, telling people you're going to move over here, you're going to move over there, right?
Oh, God.
You're not, your husband's going to live with this other girl or family, right? It's like complete
Right.
classic cult 101 shit.
Right.
Ricky. So Ricky was born in 1975 in Spain, while Karen Zerby and David Berg were there. Karen Zerby got pregnant by an unknown father who was probably a staff person at a hotel where she was aggressively flirty fishing the whole staff on David's
Oof.
orders. Um,
I hate that.
yes. Yeah, so one of those dudes was his dad. Richard, he was born Richard Rodriguez, but he would go by the cult name David or Davidito, which can I just say as a side note that I hate because they're like,
Davidito?
yeah, so it's like he's David for like theological reasons and because he's like David Jr. But I hate the fucking Davidito thing because they're actually doing like a slightly racist infantilizing of this,
Yeah,
like, oh, you're Spanish, Davidito. It's like that's not a name.
Davidito.
Fuck you.
Yeah, no, that's fucked up. That's fucked
Yeah.
up. It's horrible.
Anyway, Davidito. So they also later adopt a baby girl who they named Davida, right? Like David Davida.
That's awful also.
Yeah. And David would spend much of his childhood bouncing around Europe and Asia because his parents were constantly fleeing criminal charges for prostitution and child sex trafficking, you name it. All
All the
kinds of
good
shit.
stuff. Yeah, all the good stuff.
Yeah. And so also the cult is massive. It has branches all over the world, tens of thousands of people. They're running a large scale operation and they have plenty of places to bounce around to that will shelter them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So David Berg claimed that baby David here was essentially the Messiah. And he was a chosen prince, and he and Karen Zerby would lead the cult through the end times. So the narrative here is that the apocalypse is going to come, and then Karen Zerby and baby David will be like the apocalyptic warriors leading them to salvation.
Lovely. Okay.
That's it. Yeah.
That sounds great.
So as the chosen one, Ricky and his sister, of course, are subject to horrific sexual abuse by virtually every adult they're going to come into contact with, including both of his own parents.
That's lovely. That's just fucking
Uh,
great.
yeah.
Jesus
And
Christ.
as his principal abusers were the two nannies that took care of him, Angela Smith and Sarah Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
He was also severely secluded as the chosen one, never being
Mm.
allowed to leave his father's home, which he will later also say messed with him because he was so isolated. He couldn't even like play with other cult kids, you know?
Yeah, like if you're that, like that's next level. It's like you can't even play with other kids in a similar fucked up situation to you.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. In 1982, the cult I feel like slowing down here for emphasis. They published several thousand copies of a
Mm-hmm.
762-page graphic novel, that's what I'm going to call it, illustrated novel called The Story of Davidito, which chronicled David's childhood sexual abuse with photos documenting all of it. The offending adults, even though within the context of the cult, they thought they were doing everything the fine and normal, the
Mm-hmm.
offending adults still know it's criminal to the outside world because there's these disturbing little comic book type faces pasted on top of their faces
Right.
as
So it's
they're
like you wouldn't be,
molesting Ricky.
yeah, you wouldn't be doing that if that was cool. Like if that was something you
Yes, they
were
know it's
like,
illegal outside of the
but
cult.
gotcha. That's lovely. And they're
They actually
publishing this.
you can go to xfamily.com and see this. I don't recommend it.
No.
I for a second actually tried to list like a few milder examples, but there are no milder examples. I'm just going to say it's too grotesque to describe. You can use your imagination.
Yeah.
And it's like this poor little kid. The book starts when he's 17 months old.
Jesus
And
Christ.
he's a little baby, and
He just doesn't have a chance.
absolutely everything is sexualized. Like there'll be pictures of him having also like normal little kid times, like playing or taking a bath or something, and all the captions are sexual, all of them.
That's
So
fucked up.
everything is sexualized about children in this cult, Ricky included, every single moment of their lives, even if it's not
Like
molestation.
beyond fucking horrifying.
Yes. And it also included David, which is a frequent thing in the cult for all the kids, being forced to engage in sexual acts with other children, as well as being molested by adults. So this is pervasive. There's
Yeah.
also long narrative texts in the book about why all of this is okay and right and natural. It's like a manifesto for molesting children, literally.
Ugh. That's fucked. That's so fucked.
And
I can't even like.
the reason
Ugh.
this book was published, you may ask, why is it published? It was designed to be a child care manual. So this book was
What?
distributed. Yes, this book was distributed internationally to members of the cult to say, please do this to your children.
This is how holy fucking shit.
Yes. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
So he endured this his whole life, but by the time he's 10 years old, like all the other children in the cult around the same age, Ricky was put on a sharing schedule, which was literally a fucking schedule, a piece of paper, a chart of who would have sex with whom, adults and children and children and children.
Oh my
Not,
god.
and you got no say in it. There was no vague pretension to consent. It was just mandated by above who would be having sex with whom.
That's oh my god. Mandated
Yes.
from above via this motherfucker, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yes. And again, he's also subject to incest and abuse by his parents, and his mother is raping him as well. So, Ricky, like, can you imagine this fucking existence of this kid?
I am
Um,
so just like I cannot. That's
yeah,
this is like beyond. This is
it's
fucking
beyond.
beyond.
Honestly, it's one of the most evil cults that ever existed.
True, truly, like truly, and that's
Truly,
saying something because there's some fucked
it's
up
up
ass
there.
cults, but there's a
Yes.
lot of cults where it's like they're really weird and then they do one really bad thing
At
and
the
the rest
end,
of
some
it's
big
just
blowout.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like they're great leading up to that, but this is just like balls to the wall, fucking terrible.
Systematic harm done to the most children over time, like they might
Yeah,
win.
that's
Um,
fucked up. It's insane.
so, a big event in Ricky's young life is when Berg's granddaughter, so I guess would be his, what's the, I don't know what that makes her to him. His granddaughter comes named Mene, and she comes to live with the family at age 11 after her father, David Berg's son, kills himself by jumping off a mountain, which should also tell you something.
Yeah.
Um,
Can't believe that's not
so,
happening more in this fucking sex cult
oh, it
nasty.
does. It does.
Yeah. Okay.
So the granddaughter comes and David Berg immediately subjects her to horrific sexual abuse, his own granddaughter.
Mhm.
She has
Ugh.
some, shockingly, she has some behavioral and mental issues as a result of this and kind of starts acting out. And as a result, she is punished with horrifically violent physical punishment that they brand as exorcisms, but in reality, they're tying a little girl to a like pole and beating her.
Oh my
That's what they're
god.
doing.
Oh my god.
She's like 11. So
Ugh.
Ricky will later say that the experience of witnessing this violence was kind of a turning point for him because there was
Mhm.
like molestation, but this is the first time he was really watching it sustained violence against someone who he was his friend, a fellow kid, right?
Mhm.
Um, and this made him start thinking about getting out like really early on. And generally, like I said, the cult, I'm not getting into it as much, but they also practice brutal corporal punishment and solitary confinement for children and adults for minor transgressions, for going against the cult's will. So that's also happening in addition to all this sexual abuse.
This is so insane, Diva. Like what I just
Yeah,
like I feel like I'm having like overload to where I'm just like shutting down. I'm just like, "Uh-huh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally." Like what the fucking
Um,
fuck?
There's also a degree of emotional abuse because Ricky grew up with a lot of pressure on him to be the fucking savior, so like be perfect, et cetera, et cetera. But he
Right.
also knew his parents were using him and they actually didn't care about him at all. And other than like sexually abusing him, they showed him zero parental anything. Like and they had
Right.
the nannies had him who were also abusing him, but the parents, David and Karen, didn't do any kind of like, "Hi, I love you, I'm your parent" for like a fucking second. Nothing.
Right. Right.
They're just using him.
Jesus
In
fucking Christ.
1986, the cult banned, in big sarcastic quotes, sexually abusing children and flirty fishing, which, again, it's wild you have to put that in print. Like, stop having sex with your kids, huh? Right?
Yeah, how is
Um,
that a fucking thing?
because they're admitting they previously like encouraged it. But everyone in the cult says that this ban was really just performative and they were trying to just escape legal ramifications and the legal persecution of the cult, which was, deserved.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and some people had gotten out by this point and had caused like raids on some compounds, and so there was like an effort to be like, hey, authorities, we're not doing that, go away, right?
Yeah.
But nothing stopped.
Great.
In
Mhm.
1994 David Berg dies, and I'm sure went straight to hell if there is one. And Karen
Yeah.
Zerby and her other or then husband named Peter Amsterdam took over the cult. Peter basically rebranded it away from the child molestation. Peter was, I think, less into it, but he's still a dick, of course. And I'm sure he did nothing to stop a lot of abuse still taking place.
Yeah.
But in the
Yeah.
years that follow Berg's death, Ricky begins to slightly start to branch out on his own, although he's still technically in the cult.
Hmm.
He lives in a compound in Budapest in 1996, where he meets the woman who will become his fiancee, Alicia Munumel.
Okay.
And with Alicia, he soon starts an escape plan. So the two
Nice.
leave the cult finally with some effort. Like they have to do some intrigue and to get out of this cult, you actually had to like escape.
You had to
Um,
hide.
yes, you had to like
Yeah.
do secret shit.
Yeah.
So with some effort, they actually do get out in 2001. And Ricky and Alicia first moved to Seattle. Ricky starts working on fishing boats and then as an electrician, but they both find that getting started in real life is really fucking hard because these kids were so isolated. They had
Yeah.
no basic life skills. They had no driver's license, no documents, nothing. Like you were starting from scratch. It's like being one
Right.
of those kids who's locked in the basement or the closet, literally, and getting out
Being
and being
like,
like,
I don't know how to life. Like, I don't know how
the
to do
Turpin
life.
kids were like 22 and didn't know what a toothbrush was, you know?
Right. You're just getting
It's like
shoved
that.
in. It's like people. I've heard that there have been people who. Well, I guess once after you're 13, you can't learn languages, so that's a little bit different. But yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, I can't imagine what that's like. You know.
Yeah. So he's also struggling. Ricky is mentally, obviously, and
Yeah.
he finds that he can't let go of the anger he has for his mother and his other abusers, and just the lack
Yeah.
of justice that any of them ever got. None of them
Yeah.
were ever brought to justice, and it's making him crazy. And I do not fucking blame him at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Um, by 2004 to 2005 here, Ricky's 29, and he tells Alicia that he needs to take some time away. He's really struggling mentally, so he leaves her and goes to first California and then Arizona, staying with basically other cult survivors. That's the
Hmm.
only people that he really confides in and connects with, because they get it, right?
Hmm.
In one of several public posts he writes for the early days of the internet, he recounts his story of abuse in very short part, but he does a couple interviews and stories. In 2004, in one story, he wrote that he couldn't move on because the quote first 25 years of my life will always haunt me.
Yeah. As I mean, come on, that's
Yeah,
beyond. Like, what the fuck? You know.
yeah, yeah. And from the second he gets out, Ricky will say that he thought about revenge and killing these people continually. Like he never stopped thinking
It's like
about
all
it.
he wanted.
Yes. And again, I do not blame him.
Not one
No,
bit. Not
not one bit.
one little bit. Mm-mm.
So he basically gets in his head that he's going to stalk and find his mother, Karen Zerby, who's still the leader of the cult at this period. So his idea is that if he can take her out, the cult will fall or be affected.
I mean,
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
I get it.
Uh, so hears on a rumor that she's in Tucson, so he moves to Tucson. I think he has a friend there or a cult connection there, so he moves to Tucson. And on the night of January 7th, 2005, he makes a video of himself in this apartment outlining his plans to find Karen and other children of God
Hmm.
attacker abusers.
Okay.
He has equipment gathered in front of him, including a K-bar knife, a drill, a soldering iron, a stun gun, a large fork, duct tape, and gags.
A large fork is
I don't know
interesting to
why
me.
that's listed. That's always listed. I guess it's part of the thing. Maybe it's like a little pitchfork or something.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah.
He goes through kind of his history a little bit, some of the background with the cult. He talks about how he contemplated suicide since he was a child.
Yeah.
He sent copies of this video to Alicia and several of his friends he had become close with since getting out.
Hmm.
So looking into the camera, he holds up the knife. Here's a few choice moments here.
Uh-oh.
He holds up the knife and says, "This is my weapon of choice. I only want it for one purpose. This is for taking out the scum."
Wow. Okay. So wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He also says that he
He's there.
plans to torture people for information, and he kind of is like casually shrugging and says like, "I'm not trained in torture methods, but I'll just have to make do." And he goes burp burp on his drill.
Okay. I mean, I don't want this to be funny, but like it's kind of weird. It's a
It's a
little
lot.
it's a
It's
lot.
scary. It's scary, but then when you remember the people he's like targeting, I feel like not okay with this kind of violence, but like I feel empathy for him, obviously,
Yeah, no, no, I do. I do.
for
Uh,
how he got here.
he's obviously very lost and very like there's a lot
Yeah,
happening. There's a lot happening.
he
Yeah.
frequently rants about his mom, Karen Zerby. He says, "quote How can you do that to kids? How can you do that to kids and sleep at night?" Calls her many names. He said he will keep, if he doesn't find her, he will keep on hunting her in the next life, and he hopes that someone else will pick up the torch and keep hunting
Yeah.
her.
I mean, I feel like that's very
Um,
fair.
Yeah, it is. And what's really sad about this too is like he's a really nice guy. Like it sounds weird to say, but like you can tell and in the narratives and the way he's talking, he's so empathetic for the other survivors, for the
Mhm.
girls, for what they went through. He even tries to kind of diminish his own thing like, well, I didn't have as bad as so and so, right? And like he's so empathetic and genuine and kind and like in
Mhm.
on one level, but he's just so his brain is broken like
Yeah. Yeah.
by this. He cannot move past it. He
Yeah.
cannot get out of like
Right.
revenge mode, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that
Um
that's pretty fair considering, like
yeah.
I understand being like
I
not being
mean,
able to get past this. This is fucking horrific. Like I
with
can't.
what this kid went through, it's like I do not blame him at all. Like
No, I
this
kind of
is
don't
some of the most
either.
horrific abuse you can fathom.
And
Um
the people that did it to him are just like chilling. They're just
yeah.
chilling. Like
And that will
nothing's
make you crazy. That knowledge will make you
yeah.
crazy.
These people just
um
exist.
when your
Like
abuser's
still.
out there on a fucking beach somewhere with
Yeah.
a cocktail, it will make you
Fucked up.
crazy.
Fucked up.
So on January 8th, he calls up Angela Smith, one of his former nannies and serial abusers. She's featured extensively in the book of Davidito abusing him. So it's not like ambiguous that she did anything. We know she did.
Right. It's not a
Um,
question. She abused
no,
him horrifically.
it's photographed. So he lures her to his apartment under the pretense of like, "Hey, it's cool. I just want to catch up. How are you?" Like pretends everything's fine.
Hmm.
And when she's there, he confronts her about the past abuse, and to his great dismay, she's not remorseful at all. Has no conception that she did anything wrong because she's still deeply brainwashed, of course.
Right.
He subsequently stabs her 5 times and then slits her throat, nearly decapitating her.
Oh God. I
And
mean,
he's really frustrated that down to the end, she's not like, I'm sorry or
yeah, I
anything, you
shouldn't
know?
have raped a child. She's like, no, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
That's
He
what
doesn't
God
get like
wants.
any moment of acknowledgement that I think he was looking for.
No closure. No
No.
closure. Mm-mm.
Although he had originally planned, like I said, to track down his mom, Karen Zerby, um, he kind of folds after this because like I said, he is actually a sensitive, nice guy, and I think it was so rough for him to do that, and like he pushed himself to do it that he doesn't have any more murders in him. You know,
Right, because he's not. That's
he
not like who he is.
no,
It's interesting because this is
it's
one
like
of
an
the more
action movie
complex.
idea that he got in his head, kind of like a fantasy. But then when he actually
Right.
does it, he's like, "Oh, I don't like it."
Yeah, it's interesting because most of the time, if you're the type of person who doesn't want to murder, like you won't. It's either like a serious straight up accident
Mhm.
or somebody who wants to do it. Like this is a weird in between. It's not even like a
Yes.
sec. It's almost like second degree heat of passion, but
Yeah, well,
less. Except
he
it was way more
knew
planned. Like,
the way he talked about it is that he knew he was going to kill himself. Period. He intended to
mhm,
kill himself, but he wanted to take down cult members as well, so that his death had greater purpose or like affected the cult. Like he wanted to bring down the cult with himself.
right, right,
Um, but on the way, he calls Alexia as he's driving kind of westward ish. After this murder, and he says that it was way harder to kill someone than he thought it would be, that it didn't make him feel better. He didn't like
right.
it. He wasn't as satisfying and action
So
movie-ish as
even
he had
though
hoped.
he's like, I fucking hate these people, he's still like, I am really not stoked that
I'm
I
not a
killed
killer.
somebody. Like it's not.
Yeah,
I'm not down. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
He asks Alicia if she would kill herself with him, and she's like, "No, sorry."
Really? I
Um,
mean, it probably wasn't that like casual of a conversation, but
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but he's trying to do like a Romeo and Juliet thing. She's like, "No,
He's like, I'm
um,
cool. Yeah.
I'm good." So he goes out to an industrial area and unfortunately parks his car and takes his life.
Ugh,
and shoots himself.
sucks.
His body is found, and then Angela's are found. Body is found at his apartment shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So fortunately or unfortunately, he didn't get to do the big revenge mission that he wanted to. Which
Hmm.
again, if he did, I honestly wouldn't blame him. You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's like it's sad that he got to this point. It's sad that he didn't have enough healing or processing what happened to him to that he got to this point. It's sad.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But this is, of course, not Rookie's story alone. And I wanted to shout out, shout out, it's the wrong word. I wanted to mention the fact that over 200 ex members of the Children of God have died by suicide
That's
that
insane.
we
And it's
that we
all
know of.
like children, I assume, that were horrifically abused.
Yeah, and I'm sure some adults too, because there was a lot of women and adult men who were forced to do horrific things sexually, who were forced to cheat on their partners, who were forced to watch their partners have sex with other people, like, you know, things that are demented that you shouldn't have to do,
You shouldn't have to do.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
sexually,
And even
yeah,
if they got out after the fact, they still experienced those things. Even if they knew they were
yes,
wrong and left it as a result, it still happened.
yes.
Yeah.
Um, like I know, for example, some adults killed themselves after leaving the cult because they abused children and they couldn't live with
Right.
themselves.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, but they were forced to as well. So it's kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Anyway, this is a really evil cult. Speaking of the cult, I was going to end by saying that it still exists. It's
Oh my
called
god. Sorry, it's not funny.
It's called the Family International. It has a website. And Karen Zelby, I'm sure much to Ricky's dismay and on the other side, Karen Zelby's still around and running it.
That's how is that acceptable? Like, why are you allowed to do that?
It's smaller than it once was. But it still has over 10,000 members
That's
internationally.
how are these people not all in prison? Like,
I
if
don't know.
this is like the crux of what they do is fucking
Yeah.
harm
No,
children.
and if yeah, and there's like petitions and websites and kind of groups
Ugh.
out there, large groups, by the way, of thousands of survivors of this cult who were, you know, were children at the time when they were abused, and
Yeah.
they've all gotten together and called for justice. And it's like I don't think there's any plans for anyone to actually do anything. But it's like if you got all the people together who could actually testify to Karen Zelby doing something fucked up, you probably find like 500 people. You
Yeah,
know,
it sounds like it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So unfortunately it's still happening. Go they have a website, like I said. And just we don't know where she is, by the way. She's like off internationally, like where is Carmen San Diego? Like she's fucking doing intrigue. No one knows where
Mm,
she is. That also makes it hard to prosecute her. Or
right.
enact a Ricky style revenge, which I'm sure other kids might want to do.
Yeah, I could
Um
absolutely see them wanting to do that.
so this bitch knows she needs to be in hiding. Like, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um Yeah. Angeringly, one last, just I'll end on a really angering note. After
Great.
Ricky's death, Karen Zelby opened up a whole memorial website about Ricky, kind of reclaiming him for the cult narrative with pictures
Mm-mm.
of him as a kid, painting him as just a lost soul who lost his way, but he was really like the cult's messiah, right? And like kind of reclaiming his original image he had in the cult, which again would have made Ricky like livid.
Yeah, he very much was
Yeah.
like not at all. Yeah. Yeah.
She
Mm-mm.
did this a couple times too. Karen Selby, when a prominent member took their life, which happened multiple times, she would
Right.
run a website about them, being like, "Oh, this cult member, they're," or one person who famously defected and then like got the cult in a bunch of legal trouble. He was a big hero. He killed himself, and then she did a website being like, "He apologized to me from the grave," and
Fuck
then
off.
he
Fuck
says he
off.
really likes the cult and da 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 da,
God, I
you
can't
know.
wait for her to die. It's gonna be so great when she's fucking in the
I don't
ground.
even know if we fucking will, because she's in hiding.
But she's gonna die eventually. She's old as fuck, right?
No, yeah, she definitely will. She's in like
I
her
don't really care
70s,
how it happens. I'm just will be glad when she's gone.
80s. She must be pretty
Ugh,
old. Um,
her.
anyway, only one person technically, like, quote unquote, paid for their crimes. So it's really unsatisfying. But yeah, it's just wild how fucking evil that cult was. And by the way, Rose
Yeah.
McGowan and the Phoenix kids, River Phoenix, grew up in
Hmm.
that cult.
That's the cult. I just
Yep.
got like goosebumps. That cult
Yes.
is so fucked.
Yes.
That cult is so fucked.
Rose McGowan claims that her dad got her out right when the child systematic rape was starting, so she was spared like the worst of it, but she still kind of was negatively affected by her time there.
I'm
But the
sure.
Phoenix kids were not
Yeah,
spared.
that is horrifying
Yeah.
to think about, those
Yeah.
poor children. And like you wonder why River Phoenix had such a difficult,
Yes.
life, and
Yeah.
all those
And
guys. Like,
River was open about it and talked about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so fucked. God damn
Yeah.
these fucking people.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Cults, man, don't do it.
All right. Well, that was super fucked up.
Good morning.
Uh,
All right, it's off to
lots,
start
yeah,
our day.
lots of horrific
Oh.
abuse there to think about. What are we doing next week?
Well,
P.S.
yeah. I'm doing something I consider a Halloween topic,
Oh, right.
which is
You
a
did tell me.
redo of Mysterious Disappearances, which we did, and it is down, and it's like all legendary, famous cases. Although I might do one that is like huge, and then one that's like lesser known.
I'm doing the one that keeps me up at night. My
Mm-hmm.
least favorite, most favorite case. And I
Okay.
can't wait. Oh man, I'm gonna start right now
It's
researching because
spooky. When
it's so
people
fucking
disappear,
spooky.
it's spooky. So
Oh my god, I can't wait to talk about this because this case,
yeah,
I'm not gonna get into it, but you guys, I have so many
yeah,
thoughts on what I'm gonna do. Also, real quick, big shout out to the person who gave us a really lovely review on Apple Podcasts. They were
yeah.
like,
Thank
"We
you.
love your banter. Thanks for listening to me rant about the other one." And they even said, like, "I don't always agree with your guys' point of view, but like I appreciate that you guys have them and like they like the podcast. And thank you so much for being an adult who can like agree to disagree. Like Diva and I don't always agree. Like
Yeah,
definitely. We have different takes on things all the time. So it was really refreshing to see somebody be like, I don't always agree with your super strong fucking opinions. But, they were still like down for the podcast. So thank you very much for that review. We love you. We love everybody who doesn't
yeah.
hate on
Thank you.
us.
That was
But
very nice.
yeah, it was very nice. It was a very cool, like, refreshing review to see. So thanks. Anyway, please like, rate, review. We might give you a random ass shout out if you do.
Mm-hmm.
Share with your friends. And until the next week, which I'm really excited for,
Stay.
off our
Nice.
lists. Have fun.